Greetings! Welcome to the devlog for Alpha 1 of Update 102 of Hot Dogs, Horseshoes, and Hand Grenades. We're going to start off as always with a quick sound check. Make sure speakers aren't up too high. Wonderful. Oh, I always forget what an absolute beast that is. So, what have we got this week? Well, we have the Meat Fortress Pyro sort of expansion kit today, which I'm going to show you, and then jump on to some other improvements that came with this alpha. So let's jump right into it. Let's take a look. I know a number of you have been speculating in the Discord about what the Pyro's sort of alt gun being added is. Let me present to you another wonderful creation by PySavvy. It is the Signaler, a retro-styled flare gun based off of the sort of original concept art for the flare gun in TF2, but obviously they went with a more sort of modern-styled orange sort of plastic one, similar to the sort of modern flare gun in H3, whereas this one is more World War II styled and nice and chunky. So let's pop that open. We're going to put in our first flare type, which is classic. We can click the button to cock the hammer on this manually, or we can just brush our hand by, which makes it easier to use and fire this with one hand. Bam. We get a little bit of a fire explosion at the impact point, which does mean this requires just slightly less precision than the actual TF2 flare gun, what with us not having a wonderful, convenient little reticle drawn to the center of our screen to aim it. So that's that flare, but if you want some variety, there is one called, that's our orange shell, that is a conflagration, which is basically like a buckshot flare. It's sort of unreliable velocity, a little shorter range, widespread, but great for area, sort of sudden area denial, especially if you want to sort of block some bots coming through a doorway or what have you. Super useful, or just like firing down a lane at them. So that one's super fun. We've got a utility flare in here. This is called Sunburn, and it's a fairly standard flash explosion. As you can see, it's got a slightly slower travel time, which allows you to actually get another round out oftentimes before it lands. Boom. And then we have Danger Close. I thought for a while about whether I was going to put this in, because I was like, people are going to abuse this. People are going to do wild things with this. But it was just, I couldn't resist, which was to make a round that was based on really one of the sort of classic usages of a signal flare in a military context, which is marking a target. So if we fire ourselves a signal flare here for Danger Close, see it's just burning there, and we look up and, oh, in comes a mortar round. So that's right, one of the rockets that the soldier fires, the one labeled wrong ammo that is a mortar shell, fires and lands about 4 to 5 seconds later. Let's see here. Perfect. Oh, that is so much fun. As you can see, it's not perfectly accurate. That is one of the things. It's sort of like it's sort of firing from an imaginary mortar to the side of the level. So there's a bit of lateral bias, which means it's not going to land perfectly. And obviously, if you're firing it at something, I don't know, indoors, like that, boom, it's going to land on the roof, as you would expect from artillery fire. But yeah, super fun, and I imagine the first thing some of you are going to do is just like detonate just a huge pile of these things and see what happens. So I look forward to seeing the YouTube clip of it. Whammo. So that is our signaler, and of course we finally have a pyro grenade, which is our incendiary grenade. Oh god, I cooked the grenade. Oh, I'm on fire. Oh, that was dumb. That was so dumb. 92 health. Yeah, don't I guess the time on this grenade is real short. Don't cook these. That was super stupid. Ha! There we go. Whew. Yeah, super short cook time. I might lengthen that. That seems a little... yeah, that's a little short. It can't even get to target. I'll fix that before I push the build. Great for a short throw, though. Yeah, that should get another second. Super fun, though. So there you have it. That is our Pyro expansion kit. One of the things I'm super excited to mention, though, involving our Meat Fortress scene, is that this got a sort of a big sort of second pass upgrade this past week. With the help of one of my artists working on this, Marstruck, we basically went in and rebuilt the collision for the whole scene. As I had realized recently that this scene had been built prior to me understanding some of the big performance hitches that existed in H3. And so, even though you shouldn't experience any change in behavior in the scene in terms of, bullets colliding into things or bots sort of traversing, all of the colliders have been sort of replaced for all of the buildings and the ground and the cliffs around and things like that. And so this should make this cheaper on the CPU, especially in circumstances where there's a lot of bots. But because we finished it last night, I haven't actually gotten a chance to benchmark it and see what the impact is, if it was substantive or if it was minor, or what sort of performance sort of specs were actually impacted by the change. So I would love some feedback on that from you folks. Let's go ahead and jump over to the indoor range and take a look at another thing that changed in this update. So another thing that changed in this update was I had been working on a gun that's coming in the future that had a really big empty sort of section of its magazine on the side. And I was looking at it and I was like, you know what, without like a follower and a magazine spring, the magazine on this is just going to look silly. It's going to look incomplete. And so what that did was it made me finally go back into H3's magazine system and write a set of hooks. Now note, this won't affect every magazine because manual work is needed to update them, but basically built a system that causes let's get down here, a follower and a spring animation to play. So here's the magazine for the Makarov. Here's me loading it. Boop, 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 etc. So that is now in for about, I think I did about 12.5 different mags. Basically, I took all the magazines where you get a really sort of prominent side view of them and did the work to actually come up with the magazine spring animations and follower movements. And it's going to be one of those things that any sort of firearm going forward will obviously get this to the degree that it's relevant for its magazines. And anytime I go back and work on or tune up an old gun, it will get a similar sort of set of work. So this is a change that will sort of roll out gradually and not super evenly into the game. But as I said, I went back and I took about 12.5 magazines where you can really see, the side of the magazine there, and then actually decided to go in and give them followers, give them springs. I love how chonky this one is. And boy howdy, doesn't that make a visual difference. Oh, that looks great. Great stuff. Haha! Take that, ceiling. So there you have it. That is the other enhancement that has come this week. Let's jump out of VR now and talk about what else is going on, the other little bug fixes in this update, and what else I've been working on. Yo! So, out of VR, what else is going on? So, there were a couple sort of minor bugs. I fixed a long-held bug in the posing system for melee weapons that have multiple poses, like some of the knives on some platforms, because of just an old way that I was determining what the relevant platform was just in that one line of code. Thanks to the community member who found that. Fixed the sizing on the 38 special speed loader, and as I said, I'm right now I'm sort of like tuning up a few things related to the Meat Fortress scene. The goal with that scene, by the way, is that I would as I sort of get to the end of the Meat Fortress characters, what I would like to do is do a sort of first pass fix up of some of the pathing in that scene, because it's using the old off-mesh links, which I want to replace with my new significantly better ones. But as I had mentioned sort of last devlog, there's a bunch of stuff that I'd like to eventually do with conditional pathing, making it so that the Meat Fortress Scout can jump significantly higher, and that they do sort of like a fun little double jump. I might actually like make a little particle effect come out when that happens, add some blast jumping, and eventually add some teleporters in. But I'm still figuring out exactly when I'm going to be doing some of that work, but I'd like to lay the groundwork for it. This was, I don't know, get it, working so closely in the scene and fixing the collision sort of got the whole thing, the whole update back in my bones. So it was just really enjoyable to play with. And as I'd mentioned in the past, part of the goal here is to get to the point with all of the sort of alt equipment to make a take and hold character for the Meat Fortress sort of equipment set, and then eventually to give you folks those other two game modes I initially had promised with it. And that's probably going to be part of a single sort of larger update where we sort of complete Meat Fortress at scale at some point later this year. So you'll see me in these devlogs working on bits and pieces of that as time passes, but just so you know what the sort of eventual goal is there, is to actually get those other sorts of play modalities sort of working, get the take and hold character in, and sort of finish expanding out the equipment set. When I originally made this scene, I had sort of like big ideas, and I think, I'll admit it, I bit off way more than I could chew in terms of what I had never really had to make Sosigs function as a team and pull off that pantomime convincingly, and found that was way harder than I expected it to be. But I've developed the Sosigs so much since then. They're way more sophisticated internally, and I have a better idea about what the smart way is to make them function in groups and sort of stick together and do various sorts of things. And so I think I can actually pull off some of that stuff now. Importantly, though, I'm not going to be building that stuff on an island. I've mentioned that like one of my big focuses this year has been any time new sort of gameplay logic goes into the game, it shouldn't be siloed into its little area. It should be generic in some way. It should either be something that is added to the core logic of the Sosigs, or is some sort of modular system that isn't just specifically tied to, oh, it's in this one scene, it works in this scene, but can be deployed in multiple ways. And what I mean by that is that, like, I would, in the Meat Fortress scene, if I end up putting in something akin to a capture points mode with the bots, it shouldn't just live in that scene. It should be built out of a set of sort of player deployable components that they can lay down and they can save the configuration of. So if they wanted to play with that rhythm of bots in some fashion, they could do so outside of that context. And so that all of you folks out there who are making sort of like custom maps and such in the mod scene can deploy those structures into your maps seamlessly. So that is the whole goal, is especially looking as we're in the back half of this game by far at this point. And so I want to make sure that things that I am authoring are setting up the game for its sort of long engagement tail and for the community to be able to do fun things with it. Especially now that I feel I have explored the design space enough at this point to know what works and what doesn't. So yeah. Whew, awesome. So we are importantly moving on to the alpha branch, as I've gotten the go-ahead from the modder folk that all of their stuff is ready for it. So today, when this update goes live, it'll be going live both to the experimental branch and to the mod safe alpha branch. So those of you who play with mods should probably be able to switch over to that. Make sure they're up to date. If you're super unclear about the version of anything you should have installed, always check in with the folks in the modding channels of the Discord, and they can point you in the right direction. Remember, if you go to run the game and you're running modded and it just fails to launch or immediately crashes, probably you've got something that you've got a version mismatch going on. So check that first. Wonderful. So I think that just about does it for this week. I hope you all have yourselves a wonderful weekend, and I'll see y'all soon. Peace.